As if we beekeepers didn't have enough to deal with varroa mites and hive beetles and wax moths and foul brood, etc., now we have a brand new threat to our colonies called the yellow-legged hornet, and it's happening right here in my state in South Carolina. Today I interviewed Brad Cavin, who is from Clemson University and is on the front lines of eradicating the yellow-legged hornet here in our state as well as in the southeast where it has found its home. Join me today as we explore and do a deep dive on the yellow-legged hornet and its threat to beekeepers here in America. Hey, thanks for joining me today. We're going to talk about a brand new threat to honeybees here in America and beekeepers that need to be aware of this new threat, and it's called the yellow-legged hornet. And I have with me today Brad Cavin, who is with Clemson University, and he specializes in this. And so, hi, Brad. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for having me here today.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, your work at Clemson, and particularly how did you get involved with this whole thing with the yellow-legged hornet?
Absolutely. So my name is Brad Cavin. I work with Clemson University, and my department is the Department of Plant Industry, and I work underneath the Invasive Species Program. I'm also the Apiary Inspection Program Coordinator, which makes me the state honeybee inspector. And with looking for pest and disease issues of honeybees and the yellow-legged hornet being a major pest of honeybees, it has fallen underneath my umbrella. So I've been working with beekeepers and honeybees for about 12 years now in the state of South Carolina. And with the detection of the yellow-legged hornet, I'm one of the lead responders to this threat.
Excellent. And when did this first kind of appear on the radar here in the United States?
Sure. So the yellow-legged hornet was detected in July of 2023. It was found in Savannah, Georgia by a beekeeper. This beekeeper noticed something flying in their apiary and knocked it out of the air with a stick and collected the hornet, contacted the Georgia Department of Ag, and the Georgia Department of Ag confirmed that it was a yellow-legged hornet. Then they sent it to the USDA where it was officially confirmed. And so this hornet was a first-time detection here in the United States.
And I think if I remember right, this is actually originally an Asian species, an Asian hornet that has come to the United States. Am I correct on that?
Correct. So it is native to Asia. It is established now in Europe. It's been in Europe for approximately 21 years and is widespread across Europe and is a major issue with beekeepers and the beekeeping industry in Europe. And we're seriously concerned about it here in the U.S. affecting this industry.
So maybe it was last year, Brad, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I sent you a picture because I had a hornet that was hawking outside of my beehives, and I watched it, and it literally picked up some bees from the landing board in front of the hive, dragged them off into the grass, and was in the process of, I guess, devouring. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. And I sent you a picture, and you said, you sent that back to me and said, no, that was not the yellow-legged hornet. It looked very much like it. It was another hornet. I think you said it was the European hornet. I'm not sure if that's more common in the United States, but the behavior of this yellow-legged hornet is somewhat similar. So help people to understand, like, what exactly is this yellow-legged hornet?
Sure. So one of the roles that I play also with this response is responding to all the public reports, which has been a lot of public reports. Anything that flies, anything that has a yellow leg has been reported. It's very important to know that the yellow-legged hornet, the European hornet, the Asian giant hornet, the bald-faced hornet, all of these species of hornets are unique with their coloration on their bodies, the patterns. They all have unique characteristics and are very easy to identify. Also, how these hornets basically impact honeybees, how they nest. They all nest in different types of locations. I do remember your report, and it was a European hornet, which is commonly found all across South Carolina. That hornet gets reported all the time, and it's been in the U.S. for several hundred years.
Hey, this is Ray. Thanks for joining me today. If you're not yet a part of this community, hit like and subscribe down below and hop on and let's continue to explore beekeeping together.
And so the behavior that we're concerned about specifically with this yellow-legged hornet, similar to my experience with the European hornet, is, I think they call it like a hawking behavior. Can you describe like what this hornet is doing, potentially has the potential to do to our honeybee colony?
Yes, sir. So what you're talking about is called hawking. So yellow-legged hornets, they will identify a managed honeybee colony, a feral honeybee colony, and they basically will come into the apiary or the entrance of the colony and hover in front of the landing board and wait for foraging bees to come back from foraging. The hornet will pick off the honeybee as it comes back into the colony. It flies over to a tree or a bush and begins butchering that honeybee. It basically decapitates the honeybee, takes the wings, the legs off of the honeybee, and then consumes the rest of the honeybee. And then it returns back to its nest and feeds that to the brood, the larva, and then returns back hawking and capturing more honeybees. It is important to note that it's not only honeybees, it's other pollinators and also other insects. We commonly find the yellow-legged hornet visiting flowering plants and collecting other insects that may be on a flowering plant as well.
And so the biology of this yellow-legged hornet is also really a concern because of the way that they reproduce. So it's not just that you have one hornet that was going to pick off one honeybee. These nests actually explode. And I know I've heard you talk about this before, but can you kind of go over the whole basic core biology of the reproductive process for these yellow-legged hornets and why they can turn into these massive nests?
Okay. So the yellow-legged hornet, right now, it's only found in the low country part of South Carolina. So it's important to understand the life cycle. I'd like to begin with the queen emerging from overwintering. She emerges sometime in February, and she looks to establish the first nesting site. This first nest is called an embryo nest. The queen will construct the nest, build out the brood part of the nest, lay the eggs, feed, basically take care of that brood and raise out adult hornets. She also constructs the shell of the nest. This has taken place into February throughout May. The nests are constructed of wood and plant fibers commonly found underneath structures, roof lines, somewhere that's protected from the environment. Once the first generation of workers hatch out, they take over nest expansion, going out, getting food, bringing it back to the young, and the queen takes over laying eggs. Once the embryo nest has stopped, they will locate to a new location. We are not really clear why they may move locations. Some think that it might be due to restriction of space because the nests want to get a little bit bigger. The second phase is called a primary nest. These nests will get larger with more hornets. The primary nest begins getting constructed sometime in late May, early June, and these nests will grow to become the size of a small basketball. The primary nest can be located in the same spot as the embryo nest underneath the roof line of a structure, but they could also be in a roof line of a house, in shrubbery, in trees. We have found and removed nests from multiple locations.
And the queen can overwinter by herself? Am I correct on that?
Correct.
She doesn't need a colony around her. Can you explain that a little bit?
That is correct. So in late fall, when the queens are dispersed from the nest, you also have drones in the environment. The drones and the queens mate. So that's when she gets mated, and she'll look to overwinter in multiple different types of sites. It could be in a mulch pile. It could be in leaf litter on the forest floor. It could be inside of a structure, a seat cushion, anywhere where there's enough insulation for her to overwinter.
Okay. And when a fully mature nest that's gone through these cycles and this reproduction can be huge. I've seen some pictures of these nests. I think you actually had one at our state beekeeping conference this last summer. How big can these nests get, and how many hornets are potentially in them?
They can get big. Some of the largest nests that we've taken down, I would say they're about the size of yoga balls, which are very large. The secondary nest, usually they're located in trees, in the canopy of trees. We have found them in pine trees, oaks, sweet gum, tallow, in multiple types of trees, ranging anywhere from 25 feet up to 120 feet. Research out of Europe suggests that you can have up to 6,000 hornets over the entire lifespan of that nest of the year. But typically in the secondary nest phase, the population sizes range from 1,500 to 2,000 hornets per nest. When you get into these secondary nests, that's where you get the explosion of hornets that you were referring to.
Okay.
And that's occurring in the fall time of the year.
So you mentioned earlier that this is already a problem in Europe, for example. Do you have any data on the effect of this on honeybees in Europe? The extensiveness of how much of a problem this has become so far? Is there a way to quantify that?
It's really hard to quantify the ultimate extent of the damage to beekeeping in Europe. It is a major problem. And that is one of the major questions that I'm unable to answer right now, is what is going to be the impact to beekeeping here in the United States. Hopefully research will get funded and research projects can be conducted where we can determine and answer some of those questions. For example, where this is located in South Carolina and Georgia, it's a subtropical climate where there's plenty of places for the nest to be built. There's plenty of food for the hornets to forage on, and the temperatures are very suitable for a long season for the hornets. There's only about 8 to 10 weeks out of the year where we've seen zero hornet activity.
So talk about the extent in the United States. So you mentioned we've seen them in South Carolina and Georgia. Give us some data on how many nests have been located, destroyed, located. Tell us a little bit about the impact so far.
Sure. So in South Carolina, last year in 2024, we found and removed 16 nests here in South Carolina. Those nests were located in Beaufort County. This year, our nest total is 76 nests. That's what we've found and removed for 2025. One of the big unknowns, but research out of Europe suggests one nest can produce anywhere between 1 to 350 queens per nest. I know that's a big range for queens getting dispersed, but one of the big obstacles that we're facing is it's not a linear growth with those types of numbers. It's exponential.
Interesting. And these are mostly, like you said, located just in any other states that we've found nests in other than South Carolina and Georgia at this point?
Yeah, right now it's only been found in Georgia and South Carolina. And in South Carolina, the majority of nests we have found have been located in Beaufort County. If we find a nest, we're going to figure out how we get them down. One of the biggest challenges that we have in South Carolina is the terrain. The hornets right now seem to be hugging the coastal region where there's a lot of swamps and marsh and water, and it's very difficult to survey and hunt nests down when you have those types of conditions.
So Brad, if a beekeeper wanted to try to identify this hornet, what would they actually be looking for if they were going to try to identify it on their own?
That's a great question. When I'm talking to beekeepers, whether it's at a state association meeting or local association, I often let beekeepers know that beekeepers play a frontline responsibility to help us identify the hornet, especially as it's on the move. One thing that I do encourage beekeepers to do is to watch their apiaries and look for that hawking behavior. That hawking behavior is very easy to identify, and reporting the hornet is critical from beekeepers, but also the public. We've created a public reporting tool that I've provided you with a QR code where anybody, whether they're a beekeeper or somebody in the public, can go to our public reporting tool. We're going to ask some information from you, who you are, where you're located, what you're reporting. Are you reporting a yellow-legged hornet, or are you reporting a yellow-legged hornet nest? We do ask that we do require photos be uploaded to all reports. We get a tremendous amount of reports from outside of the known area of where we know where the yellow-legged hornet is, but the public reporting tool is something that is going to help us identify when it jumps to a new location. And if we're able to identify that location quick enough, we can respond faster by setting out traps, where we set traps out initially to detect hornets. And then that helps us start zoning in and hunting in on a potential nest location where we're utilizing multiple techniques for hunting down nests. Could be visual observation with our eyes, could be the use of binoculars, spotting scopes. We use bait stations where we may convert a trap that we have set up where we lure in hornets and identify that flight path. If it's an apiary where hawking is going on, that can help us identify that flight path. And that hawking behavior, as I described, the hornets, they're going to come from their home and go hunting. That's where they do the hawking, and then they're going to return home, and they repeat that process all day long. And so it's very critical to identify that flight path and locate the nest. These nests are very difficult to spot. They're camouflaged in foliage in the canopy of trees. So it's not as easy as finding the flight path and finding the nest. They're hidden very well.
Yeah. I heard Ben Powell, who you work with at Clemson University, say one time that one of the effects of the yellow-legged hornet is that the bees' behavior, their foraging behavior, changes when they recognize that there's a threat outside the hive. Do you know anything about that? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So if yellow-legged hornet or yellow-legged hornets are hawking honeybee colonies, what I've witnessed the bees stay congregated on the landing board. They're not going out actively foraging like they would if they didn't have that threat outside their house. And so one of the thoughts is they're not out actively foraging. And so the nutrients, the food supply inside the colony dwindles. And so it could create a situation where that colony could become weaker. The colony could have a secondary issue, whether it's a varroa mite or a disease or something that comes in. But by not having those high numbers of foragers, the colony becomes weaker. They just stay at home. They know the hornet's there. They sense it.
Yeah, interesting. What is the Hornet Herald?
So the Hornet Herald, that is a newsletter blog that we've started here in South Carolina. We're trying to use the Hornet Herald to provide updates and get information out to beekeepers and the public with data, with numbers that we're seeing, with maps and locations. We're providing updates on numbers of traps, number of hornets, number of nests. This year, right now, we have just under 1,400 traps put out here in South Carolina. We've had just under 16,000 trap checks this year. And those under 16,000 trap checks, we've caught over 16,000 hornets in our traps. We also have some YouTube videos that we've created on how to make traps, how to make the bait, but also a YouTube video on how to make a public report also.
Okay, good. And send me those links. I'll put those in the description of this particular video. Brad, let's wrap up with a couple of just generalized questions here. Number one, how serious would you say this threat is, in your opinion, to American beekeepers at this point?
I think it's a serious threat. I think and believe that if it spreads throughout the whole Southeast, where agriculture is a huge industry and beekeeping plays a critical role in pollination and food production here in the U.S., what's going to happen to the beekeeping industry? I don't know that answer. I do know in the state of Georgia, they're a very large commercial beekeeping state where they have a tremendous amount of queen producers. If the yellow-legged hornet gets established in areas where we have queen producers, is it going to affect queen production? Georgia also produces, they have a huge package industry where beekeepers in Georgia create packaged honeybees that they ship all across the United States. And so it's a serious concern to me. By not knowing that answer is how is this going to impact agriculture?
Yeah, excellent. And so one message to the beekeepers that will be watching this from all across the country, like what's the one thing you really want them to take away from this video?
One of the big asks that I ask my beekeepers here in South Carolina is to watch your apiaries for hawking. Report hawking as soon as you see it. This hornet will move. Naturally, it's flying anywhere between 10 to 20 miles a year is what it looks like. We're noticing, but it is important to know that this could hitchhike. This could end up anywhere in South Carolina, anywhere in the U.S. Say, for example, someone comes to South Carolina or Georgia and goes camping, and an overwintering queen gets in a camper, for example, and rides back home with that visitor to the state. So it's critical that, not only beekeepers look for these things and report them, but beekeepers and the public play a critical role in reporting the spread of the hornet.
Boy, if it's not one thing, it's another with beekeeping.
The honeybees are under a lot of stress. There's issues that we have here that have been in the United States for years. There's also issues that are knocking on our front door that aren't here yet. I do feel like one of the issues that we have with the yellow-legged hornet is public awareness doesn't seem to be the same as it was in 2020 when the Asian giant hornet was discovered in Washington state.
Yeah.
When that was reported, they had a name that sensationalized hornets. Everybody was at home and looking outside and spending time outdoors. And so it created a hornet frenzy, if you will, where that hornet was only found in Washington state. It's important to note that the yellow-legged hornet and the Asian giant hornet are not the same hornets. They nest differently. They look different. They impact honeybee colonies differently. But what we did in South Carolina when that was reported in 2020, we did start trapping for hornets in the state. And we established several sampling survey sites in South Carolina where we started familiarizing ourselves with traps and baits where we didn't have any detections or reports for that hornet. But I do feel like starting trapping back then did give us a foundation for what was to come in 2023 when the yellow-legged hornet was discovered. In 23, when it was reported, I found out about the hornet when the rest of the United States found out that it was found in Savannah. And we hit the ground running within a week after that report came from Georgia and established trapping sites along the border and quickly expanded trap numbers and locations. And we're trying to do the best we can given the difficulties of finding the nest to remove them.
Brad, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for visiting, and we'll try to stay on top of this, and maybe we'll touch base again down the road and see if there's any updates, hopefully with good positive news that we're being able to combat the spread of this yellow-legged hornet here in America.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the time to talk about the hornet. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, this is Ray. When you hit like, subscribe, or leave a comment, it really helps me to build my channel. So thank you so much.